dear colleagues, dear guests, on behalf of Association Lidea, I would like to welcome you to this international conference, Lithuanian Contribution to Development Cooperation, 10 years since the accession to the EU and what is next. Back in 2004, Lithuania was accepted to the European Union, and that was a major achievement for the whole country. This year, we celebrate the anniversary of first decade as being an EU member state. At the same time, we celebrate the first 10 years as acting as a donor country. And today we have a great moment to have a look back at the progress made in development cooperation in the period of these years. And this conference was organized to review the major achievements of Lithuanian development cooperation and to discuss the challenges that we faced, and as well to share the vision of what kind of development cooperation policy Lithuania needs nowadays. In Lithuania, NGOs could probably be called as the key players of cooperational development. Therefore, a special focus will be given to the involvement of NGOs in European development cooperation policy making today. And we have representatives from various organizations, from NGOs, from business, from European confederations. And I'm glad that not only Lithuanian participants are here today. We have guests from Estonia, from Latvia, and from Portugal, Italy, Georgia, and Ireland. Well, not all of them are actually present here. Some of them we will meet via Skype, and we will see some video recording. But let me encourage you that we could use this forum to discuss the priority topics on Lithuanian and European development cooperation agendas, and to learn from each other, as well to share the experiences and ideas for the future cooperation. But before we start, I would like to invite Ms. Daiva Penkauskienė, the board member of Association Lidea, to say some welcome words.
Labas rytas visiems, aš kalbėsiu
Morning for everyone. I will be speaking Lithuanian. And very briefly, I'm really happy to see you here at the final Association Lidea conference. And I tried to translate the title to Lithuanian language, but I understand that we are speaking here of development cooperation, of its progress, of challenges and prospects. And also the event is as a final event of our presidency project, which cannot be translated to Lithuanian language, so we'll tell that in English. A very long title, and so Lithuanian language is a kind of language which is longer than English words. And of course, we here are to speak of a nice date, which is a decade jubilee, and we're going to celebrate that. The conference is a bit late according to all our plans, and maybe there are objective causes. As usual, for such events, there are no always proper dates. They're always missing and lacking. But anyway, we are happy that with this project, we are not late, at least significantly in comparison to other countries. And from what I heard from other countries, from the projects of presidency periods, I think that this project was one of the more successful ones. We performed everything besides without any challenges, huge challenges, and the big problems. Of course, there were some smaller, minor problems, but this is a natural process. And with this project, we wanted to achieve three big goals. One goal is to disseminate information and message for the broad community on development cooperation, seeking to gain better awareness and, of course, support for the policy of the development cooperation. Second is to seek for a dialogue between different parties concerned in the policy of development cooperation, and between the civil society, between the parliamentarians and other decision makers and organizations of decision making, different groups of the society, and also to contribute to the strengthening of the capacities of NGOs in this area. And yes, indeed, we can say that it's not possible to achieve all the goals by 100%, but the direction was a proper and correct direction, and a successful one. And we can be happy today and glad that we were successful. And first of all, we have to thank for that to those who implemented the project, which are members of the organization LEDIA, and also the National Cooperational Development Platform members. And also, I thanked, but I would like once again to thank our Confederation Concord, the Trialogue project, and Doha's organization, which are not only our partners, but I could tell they are our true friends from whom we learned, and we are learning, and we will be learning, because this is quite a new area. We would also like to thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs, with which we have been cooperating for many years, and during this period we had a very intensive and fluent cooperation with it. And in particular, I would like to thank Mrs. Laima Jurevicin, who is director of the Developmental Cooperation Department. And thanks to them, this cooperation was fluent between different agencies, institutions, parties concerned. And a lot has been achieved. First of all, we have a law on developmental cooperation, humanitarian aid. We are very proud to have that law. We interpret it, we explain about it in different areas of Lithuania to different community groups. And we also have Development Cooperation Commission and Interagency Commission, which is a big achievement, and which will be considering very important strategic educational information questions. And in this commission, we also have representatives of our association. We also are grateful to the member of the Parliament of the Republic of Lithuania, which is the Reproductive Health Development Cooperation, Marija Aušrinė Povilionienė, who was the supervisor of this event, and she really helped us a lot by arranging the event, and with all other help. I could just tell you that big achievements are never quick achievements. This year is very subtle, very demanding, requiring knowledge and perception. And perceptions do not change so quickly. But as far as I know, and I work based on my experience of more than 10 years, I do see changes. They are slow changes, but they are sustainable, remaining changes. But we would not be able, of course, to expect fast, very rapid changes, but things are going on. We talk of that, and which is already a big achievement in itself. I thank you so much to all of you, and I wish you both official and unofficial, informal and informal cooperation and communication. Thank you.
As Daiva Pankauskienė has mentioned, we are very delighted that this event is patronized by Marija Aušrinė Povilionienė, the member of Seimas of Republic of Lithuania. She is very well known and also awarded for her active work in the field of human rights, gender equality and equal opportunities. Mrs. Marija Aušrinė Povilionienė is active member of various committees, such as European Affairs and Committee on Human Rights. She's also a head of a parliamentary group for development cooperation and reproductive and rights as well as a group of women parliamentary. So I would like to invite Mrs. Marija Aušrinė Povilionienė to say some welcome words as well.
Thank you so much. I'm really very excited to hear such kind words about me. But I would like to speak in Lithuanian. Labas rytas.
So, good morning. I will speak Lithuanian. Dear participants of the conference, dear guests, all of you who came to the event devoted to the Lithuanian decade of our presence in the EU, and also the decade of our participation, of the participation of Lithuania in the developmental cooperation and humanitarian aid rendering. Dear people, your work is very purposeful and noble because you share with others your knowledge, professional experience. You help people and states exchange experience and to change the present and create future. Prior to telling a few words about the development of Lithuanian development cooperation, I would like to sincerely thank organizers of the and in particular my assistant Arturas Rudomanskis, thanks to whom we are all here seeing each other. The concept of the Lithuanian development cooperation and humanitarian aid was started being formed in 2003. In 2006, policy guidelines of development cooperation have been developed and set up, and in 2013, in May, Seimas adopts the law on of the Republic of Lithuania on development cooperation and humanitarian aid. And I will not be too humble, and I will tell that I was personally involved in the development, in the preparation of this law. Lithuania, in the policy of the development cooperation, emphasizes the strengthening of democracy, civil society management, also development of administrative capacities, integration to processes to the European community, also formation of regional policy, economical trade relations, also education, science, healthcare, environmental meanings, and also importance of the safety, security, and stability. In 10 years, Lithuania was learning to develop a developmental cooperation policy and shared its experience in the area. However, already today, and also today, there are people in Lithuania who are not able to understand, to perceive the significance of development cooperation. Therefore, they reproach constantly that we shouldn't support others until we are experiencing ourselves some shortages. And with national trends becoming stronger in Europe, it is now very necessary to explain to our citizens that in the globalizing world, no state can remain isolated today. That through the help to other countries, we strengthen also our security and significance of Lithuania in the Baltic Sea region, in Europe, and in the world. An important segment of the Lithuanian development cooperation is activity of different non-governmental organizations. The essence of that activity is to communicate, to cooperate, to unite into the platform of the humanitarian aid. The activity of these organizations reaches Eastern Europe, Southern Caucasus states, Africa, Asia, and other countries of the Latin America. Lithuanian society sensitively reacts and helps states which suffered from different accidents and natural calamities, military conflicts. But I think that the Lithuanian society should be educated more in clarifying the necessity of eliminating poverty, illiteracy, and also in the importance of the help to such developing countries in the areas of health, education, administrative capacities. Starting from 2007, I am managing the Lithuanian Family Planning and Sexual Health Association, and also the same as the Development Cooperation and Reproductive Health and Rights Group. When, together with several European states, we were implementing the project Let's Help Girls of Africa, the essence of which was the reduction of their poverty and the improvement of their sexual reproductive health services. So we heard quite a lot of irony and criticism from the part of Lithuanian journalists, but we always emphasize that while talking about African girls, we talked also about the necessity of the sexual education in Lithuanian schools. Also, creation of favorable conditions for the youth with respect to health, which we do not have until now. I'm very pleased to recall cooperation with the Lithuanian Adult Education Association, which successfully develops development cooperation ties, and thanks to which, to its initiative, the Seimas Education, Science and Cultural Committee started developing a new law on non-formal adult education, which with its modern content has already been registered with the Parliament. Therefore, while finishing, I sincerely wish participants of the conference productive work, interesting discussions, and I ask of the conference to disseminate as wide as possible in Lithuania the meaning, significances of this event, because the materials of this conference is a very impactful way of educating the society. Thank you.
And the highlights of the achievements of Lithuanian development cooperation policy. I would just like to say that your work and input is very valuable. Thank you. Now we can move on to the next object on our agenda, and we will start the plenary session. The first part of it, the Lithuanian contribution to development cooperation, 10 years since the accession to the EU, and what is next. And it has been a long way. We had to come to get to where we are today. And first of all, I would like to invite Mr. Justinas Bakūnas from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Department of Development Cooperation, to present Lithuanian and EU development cooperation policies from the national perspective.
Labas rytas.
Good morning. So we will use the Lithuanian language and we will be interpreting again. Yes, as dear member of the parliament mentioned, Mrs. Aušrinė Pavilionienė, we overcame a long way, 10 years, and maybe that was a symbolical event, and crowned by the law which we mentioned. We finished this year the preparation of executive legal acts, and whereby the legal base of the development cooperation has been put into order and the vision has been formed, which is reflected in the government resolution concerning development cooperation and humanitarian aid for 2014 and 16. Therefore, we have basics for our work, and the basics are structured, and which is good. And in 10 years, my colleagues mentioned, we grew a little bit up, and I could tell you, if we calculate that assistance from 2004, so in 2004, our official assistance for the development, and I have, of course, in mind all institutions, and we use the methodology of OECD, achieved 7 million euros last year. We achieved 41 million euros amount. Therefore, we, of course, achieved a lot, but we still lag behind our commitments that we assumed as a member state upon entering the EU, because we obliged ourselves that the official support to the development is 0.33% of the national budget. Total national budget. But of course, we all know, and I'm sorry, of course, for this, that this has not been achieved, and the crisis struck on us and all other countries, which corrected, of course, our plans, also plans of other countries, nothing to be done. But on the other hand, I would like to say that we are quite glad that although we are small and we're impacted by the crisis, even more affected by the crisis, we managed to retain in the last 2 years that level of support, which was in 2009 when the crisis struck on us. The prospect, the future, talking sincerely. Perhaps we will not achieve that goal by 2015 to allocate 0.33% of the national product, but the commitment obligation, of course, according to our possibilities, will be pursued to increase that support. And it is being repeated on all levels, and we see that the parliament supports us. The government is reminded of that. So we'll see what possibilities we have. We put our efforts, request, and there's another important moment concerning the law, and which provided big opportunities for us, that we try to decentralize that assistance in a way, and each institution, state institution, the ministry can foresee in their budgets a separate budget line for development cooperation and activities, as well as municipalities can do that. So, concerning the NGOs, I think this is quite a good prospect to start requesting, things. And you have an opportunity to go more further to regions, to communicate with municipalities, to fight with them, to persuade them, to talk to them, and please make use of those opening opportunities. And while continuing and while generalizing of how our activity in 10 years developed and progressed, I would like to say that we have delineated, determined our activity historically and geographically. And I mean that our activity is mostly concentrated to the Eastern Partnership countries. This is not a miracle, perhaps, and I think that this will remain in future. And bearing in mind our common historical past, and also based on the fact that our eastern border is also the European Union external border. And sometimes during the presidency and in general, we raise that question of attracting attention to Eastern Partnership countries, because when we speak of development cooperation, we usually have in mind Africa and other similar countries. But let's see what's behind our doors. We have Moldova, Republic of Moldova, which is one of the poorest countries in the world. Let's not forget. And so we seek to attract attention to this region and to the neighbors of the EU, who are just behind the doors, and to allocate some attention to them. Perhaps maybe that helped and opened their eyes. And I think that the Ukrainian events really demonstrated the correctness of our policy, of our approach. And now we see the situation and how dangerous and sensitive it is, and we do have to cooperate with countries and to avoid similar events. And now we hope that more attention will be paid to the things mentioned by me, and this is one of our priorities, to which we are going to continue paying attention. Of course, each country is a bit different, and our approaches with respect to them in the area of development cooperation will be a little bit different. And democracies are not equal, and maybe there are dissatisfied people and parties, but democracy is that guarantee of stability without which it is not possible, to pursue other activities. Of course, democracy is not a commodity which can be exported, and we cannot impose that democracy. We can just help those societies, those communities which wish to change, to develop that democracy, to help them, assist with our experience while raising awareness among the civil society, etc., and which is done by us. other countries, again, the other more distant countries of Eastern Partnership. So concerning them, we usually strengthen administrative capacities in them, and there are different separate sectors like agriculture and healthcare. So we pay attention to these issues. We just need to understand that while being conditionally small assistance givers and donors, so we still have the question whether we have to be, so to say, disseminated and to cover as many sectors as possible, or to concentrate our efforts and small funds and human resources to some more narrow areas, some specific areas, not to cover too broad areas, and to select targets. But that doesn't mean that we see Eastern Partnership countries as our goals of cooperation and targets. Not only them. And we also now are considering very seriously, and for several months, including business and other institutions, negotiations concerning our bilateral, very specific bilateral assistance to Africa. We are thinking of maybe selecting one country or two countries. We are looking which of the countries could be more suitable, which would receive our assistance and which would be most effective. And that is related with our President's event organized in Brussels, and which were the European Days of Development Cooperation. And during those days, we had a very high-level panel discussions, including Ethiopian Development Cooperation Minister, also Liberian Social Affairs and Development Minister, many other important persons. And there we saw very clearly that our experience and knowledge would be quite adaptable over there, in that sense that even while talking openly, of course, we are small, but we, on the other hand, have advantages. Not always size matters. So we are small, but we have some advantages, and conditionally we look, our image is quite good in those countries because we have no big economic or military power, and we are not, so to say, pursuing any strategical interest in those countries, and kind of that defends our innocence and our sincerity. So therefore we can act there, and we in particular emphasize the transference of our experience on them. Lithuania is not the only country. There are more countries in the EU which overcame the road of economical, political transformation, that period of transformation, and quite fast, and changed systems quite quickly and quite successfully. 10 years later, we found ourselves within the EU, so therefore we can be proud and we can share those achievements. This is needed, the most of the transformation which is taking place in other countries now, which are, so to say, countries in transition. So this is not possible, so to say, to copy the experience and transpose it to those countries. So what was good for us will be good for them. No way. But we try to adapt, and from our cooperation we see many coincidences. For example, in the system of finances, like border guards, also in the area of other law enforcement officials. So trainings could take place within those systems, like in the area of legal acts, the adaptation. And so this is our niche, and we'll try to concentrate our efforts to it, and we will try that also in future, that transposition of experience would be reflected in the future agenda after 2015. And we now try even do efforts to involve ourselves in the activity in Africa. I could talk and talk a lot and more But there is one more instrument. I recalled one very interesting thing, which I, so to say, detected quite recently. Detected a possibility that we are one of the few countries where and which each personally can be involved in the development cooperation, personally, in all meanings, in all senses. We have a possibility to transfer 2% of our taxes to whatever we wish, to anyone, even to the protection of animals, starting from that and finishing with assistance to African children, which is a very good instrument. We are all allowed to use it, and we are deploying it. And so if we educate the society, or we could encourage it to allocate that tax to different noble purposes, so the money is available and could be used directly to development cooperation, which is one of the instruments not possessed by other countries. I doubt very much if they have that opportunity provided to them by the government. And if we associate our activity with European policies, so apart from what I mentioned regarding the purposes of inclusion, we're also trying to look at the instruments, at the mechanisms which are available now, the TAEX program, the twinning program. And Lithuania is a leader in the twinning support in the general sense, which is cooperation of institutions and exchange of experiences between the countries. Lithuania is an absolute leader among the newer countries, although we are not new anymore. We are celebrating the 10 years anniversary, so we're exceeding other countries in this year, and we win projects. Sometimes with partners, sometimes on our own, and that is a proof of our capacities, and transposition of experience is needed, and so we're using that instrument in the neighboring countries of the EU and also with respect to other countries, pre-accession countries. But why not expand that mechanism to other countries? Because that mechanism proved to be effective and needed, and it would be quite beneficial to use it, to deploy it in Africa as well. Why not? And of course, we would need some input, of distribution, reallocation of our funds, but which is possible, and this is entirely possible. So much in briefly from my part. If you have questions, I'm open to questions anytime. We'll be able to discuss now or during the break.
A lot has been done, and we have a solid background now, so we can all get started to be more proactive, collaborating with our neighbors, and first of all, with the different actors within Lithuania. And I really like that you said that being a small, the size doesn't always matter, right? That we all have a chance and opportunity to contribute to cooperation or development. I forgot to mention that the question session is foreseen after the first 3 presentations. So,
dear colleagues, my name is Seamus Jefferson. I'm the director of Concord.
Okay. Yes. So, if you have some remarks or some questions to ask, please put them down on the paper. Don't forget them. And as my colleague Arūnas is already getting ready for the second presentation today, I mentioned that not all participants, not all the speakers were able to be here physically today. So our second presentation will be video recorded. And I see that... Oh. Jūs dar neturite išeiti, ar ne? Okay, all right. No. All right, so the second presentation we have from the Mr. Seamus Jefferson, the director of Concord, the European Confederation of Relief and Development NGOs. And Mr. Jefferson will present the Confederation within his presentation. As well as he will share the insights about the value of national platforms and NGO participation in the European Development Cooperation policy-making process. So please take a look at the screens now.
Dear colleagues, my name is Seamus Jefferson. I'm the Director of Concord, the European NGO Confederation for Relief and Development. I'm sorry I cannot be with you here today, but I wanted to say a few words on behalf of Concord through this video message. Concord is made up of 28 national NGO associations from all EU member countries and 18 networks representing the big European NGO families like Oxfam, Caritas and Save the Children. One of the strengths of our confederation is this combination of national NGO platforms represented in each member state of the EU, along with the main NGO networks. This makes our policy and advocacy positions detailed, broad-based and representative, and therefore influential with EU decision makers. The role of national platforms is particularly important in influencing decisions in which EU member states have a major say. The EU Council of Development Ministers is chaired by the rotating EU presidency, and thus Concord's members have a key role to play working with and influencing the government holding the presidency. In this respect, we had excellent cooperation and I believe great success during last year's Lithuanian presidency of the EU, when important development business, including negotiations on EU development financing, were taking place. We know the Lithuanian National Platform took the opportunity during the presidency to improve their participation in sharing and shaping and implementing development cooperation policies, raising public awareness through education and outreach campaigns, and building their member organisations' capacities and capabilities. The presidency period leads to increased collaboration between government officials and our member, and working relations with policymakers are strengthened. I know increased policy dialogue has resulted in the promotion of emerging topics such as the post-2015 agenda and promoting more coherence from a development point of view of other EU policies like finance, agriculture and trade, the so-called PCD or Policy Coherence for Development agenda. And we very much hope the Lithuanian government will continue to support Lithuanian civil society and to let civic engagement grow, to explore new themes and countries and work towards policy change that is a key to a vivid democratic society. Last week in Brussels at Concord's General Assembly, we celebrated the contribution over the last 10 years of the new EU member states to EU development cooperation. For us, it was particularly important to showcase here in Brussels Lithuanian and other EU 13 NGO efforts in a diversity of development cooperation fields, including good governance, equal opportunities, health, food security, children's rights, and other areas of engagement in developing countries. Though mostly working in the region of the Eastern Partnership, the geography of the Lithuanian NGO engagement has spread towards Central Asia, even in Latin America, the Caribbean and Sub-Saharan Africa. And a diverse range of Lithuanian civil society organisations have played their role in raising awareness of development cooperation policies amongst the public and supporting citizen engagement. I think that's particularly valuable and important to maintain a dialogue with the general public, as well as decision makers, about our work and our issues, at a time when people are experiencing youth unemployment, rising inequality and stagnant living standards at home. We have to make our case, but also listen as we discuss development and global solidarity. I hope these themes will feature prominently in next year's European Year on Development, which will begin under the Latvian presidency of the EU. Next year will be a year negotiating a new 2015 Sustainable Development Framework to replace the Millennium Development Goals, and no doubt a key moment also for the EU's relations with its eastern neighbours. Let me end by congratulating Litdia and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania for marking this important milestone in EU history and its impact on our sector. And I wish you a fruitful conference. Looking forward to hearing from my colleagues of your discussions and conclusions. Thank you.
It always feels good when people talk nicely about the work which has been accomplished, right? Well, as Mr. Jefferson stressed, the dialogue among various players, which is crucial for the achievement of raising awareness, especially talking about the next year, which is going to be the year of development cooperation. I truly believe that what we are talking about here today and the results of the conference would be very useful for the next year. And let me invite the third speaker of this session, Miriam Sutrup. She's the representative of the Trilogue, the project to strengthen civil society and organization in Enlargement EU for active engagement in global development. Ms. Sutrup will share the experience of development organizations of the EU 13, and we'll talk about the main achievements and results. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the organizers for inviting me and Trilogue to this conference. I will be talking from the perspective of the EU 13 development NGOs. So by EU 13, I mean the NGOs, development NGO sectors from the countries which joined EU since 2004. And it's a challenging task, I find, because this group of countries is not homogeneous. So what I will be presenting, it's an overall perspective and not applicable to each and every single situation always. So the topics I will address is firstly to introduce a bit what Trilogue is and why we're talking about EU 13 NGOs. The importance of these EU 13 NGOs and the experience that they brought to European development cooperation sector, NGO sector. Also, I will shortly address the progress and results that has been achieved within the last 10 years. And lastly, point out a few challenges we still see ahead. So just to give you a bit of a background about Trilogue, it's a project that has been going on already for 15 years almost. It was set up to support the development NGOs in then accession countries and in the new member states to engage more and better in development cooperation and awareness raising, and with a special focus of getting engaged on European development NGO sector and the work that they do on European level policies. Actually, the project was set up by Austrian, and it's supported by Austrian Development Agency, also European Commission, and a consortium of NGOs in Europe, including Concord, whose director you just heard on the video. So we are working very closely together. And Trilogue addresses a lot of issues of capacity building and has done it over the last 15 years. Capacity building for the development NGO platforms in the newer EU member states, but also the members. We are creating networking and peer learning experiences for development NGOs in these newer member states to learn from each other, to share best practices and discuss strategic challenges. And also one big focus, as I mentioned, is to support the engagement on European development NGO work. And this is done in numerous ways. Well, firstly, Trilogue supported the establishment of platforms. Most recently, a development NGO platform was established in Croatia just in February this year. And last week they became a member of Concord. But with the accession countries of 2004, the establishment process was much earlier. Already in 2002 in Czech Republic, 2003 in Slovakia. And we also support development NGOs to be active in Concord working groups, where actual thematic content work on European development cooperation policies happens. And we have seen great progress. Today we see that 5 working groups have leaders or so-called co-chairs from new member states taking up and leading the work in these working groups, where European development NGOs from all over Europe and big networks come together, and it's great to see this development. And why is it so important for NGOs to engage in not only be watchdogs or look at national level development cooperation policies, but also on European level, is that if we look at the practice of new member states, then 60 to 70% of their official development assistance is given through multilateral means and agencies, and very much through European Union. So it's the role of the civil society to keep an eye on the work of European policies. And occasionally, Trialogue has also facilitated advocacy initiatives on issues only applicable for the newer member states. For example, some project conditions for European Commission projects in development cooperation. But usually the work of advocacy goes through Concord on European level, which is the legitimate body for all European NGOs to join and talk to the European decision makers. So shortly, what experience we have seen within the last 10 years, what the newer member state NGOs have brought to the bigger sector in Europe. Well, one noticeable difference is the focus that has shifted more to Europe's neighborhood, geographically both to the eastern neighborhood and also the South and Western Balkans. This has not been traditionally the focus, and the working group in Concord was also set up called the Enlargement, Pre-Accession and Neighborhood. And until recently, this was led by Bulgarian and Maltese colleagues, and the membership is dominated by new member states representatives. And together with this geographical focus, also thematic focus has more included, in addition to issues like basic needs, access to healthcare, but also democratization and good governance issues. So I'm not saying that these are the main focus now of the development NGO sector in Europe, but with the accession of newer member states, we can see that the NGOs also are addressing these issues more. And I'm also not saying that the newer member states NGOs are not interested in working in least developed countries and that they don't do work there. They do, but there still has been a bit of a shift. Secondly, what we can see that the EU13 NGOs brought to the European NGO sector is a strengthened focus on development education and awareness raising. So there are 2 working groups in Concord which have very strong presence from EU13 NGOs, and one of them is the Development Education and Awareness Raising Forum. So the EU13 NGOs have realized how important it is to engage citizens, to raise awareness about issues of global interdependencies, global justice, and to have the citizens backing to the work of development cooperation. So this strong focus and interest has definitely contributed to the overall EU development NGO sector. Also, what we can see is that newer member states, maybe because they have a very new sector of development NGOs, they're more likely to cooperate with other sectors. For the last year and a half, the European development NGOs have been going through a process of self-reflection and reassessing how we should address the challenges of today better. How can development NGOs be more relevant for citizens? And one one outcome has been that we should not be looking only internally in our little development NGO sector, but communicate more with the organizations from other sectors of civil society, but also society as a whole. But what we can see is that many new member states already do that. For example, I'm from Estonia, and the development NGO platform AKU, they have members from environmental NGOs, human rights focused organizations, and it's a big mix. Whereas maybe in many older states, it's more very focused, specialized NGO sector. And also, we can see that it's easier sometimes for newer member states to have equal partnerships with their partners from development cooperation. Maybe because they're more flexible, often smaller, and don't have a post-colonial baggage. So what progress do we see of the EU13 NGOs within the last year? From Trilogue's perspective, we can see a lot of changes. We see that there is a lot of expertise within the NGO platforms. One example is that when Trilogue started working with the civil society organizations in new member states, Trilogue organized the trainings and explained what development cooperation is, what kind of working methods NGOs use. Whereas now our project has really decentralized, and most of the trainings are organized by the development NGO platforms themselves. So it's a great achievement because a lot of talented people are working in this area and have gathered expertise. Also, we see the progress of organized civil society to address this important issue. It's good for a citizen who wants to know more or get engaged in development cooperation issues, but also for state bodies that they know who to turn to because this group of NGOs has come together. We see a lot of progress in the work the national platforms, especially of EU13 development NGOs, have done regarding relations with governments. They play a great watchdog role. They all participate in the Pan-European Aid Watch report, which is published annually, and 6 new member states platforms also publish their national Aid Watch reports annually. So, but in addition to that, they are also partners. Some new member states platforms have even formalized it by signing a memorandum of understanding with ministries of foreign affairs. And it has been a great relationship building exercise. Also, we see great progress how connected the development NGO platforms and NGOs themselves are around the world with their partners in partner countries, but also in Europe with different civil society organizations. And as the director of Concord was mentioning in the video, last week there was an event in Brussels to mark the 10th anniversary of the big EU enlargement. And there was a panel discussion to showcase some examples of what development NGOs from the newer member states have done in the area of good governance and in gender equality. And it wasn't hard to find these good examples. So there were very good experiences shared on panels, and it's a great achievement. But if we look ahead, a lot has been achieved within these 10 years, but what could still be needed for a further effectiveness and to enable even further the NGOs in the EU13 countries. One thing we notice is the sustainability of NGOs. A lot of NGO platforms and individual NGOs struggle with this, especially in the environment where there are a lot of opportunities to implement projects. But what happens between 2 projects? How to sustain an office when you can't write these costs into the project application. And this sustainability not only on financial terms, but with a more certain situation, it's also easier to keep human resources in the organizations and build up expertise, and in that sense, be even more effective. Another challenge we see is in order for EU 13 NGOs to be even more integrated into the work of European development cooperation policies, is the same that there is a great participation already on European policies, but there could also always be more. Also what we recently did with a trialogue, we looked at how much take the EU 13 NGOs part of the European Commission project calls. And we saw that with the development education and awareness raising call, there's a great participation, and 14% of the budget was allocated for new member states over the years 2004 to 2013. But when we started looking at the development cooperation projects, which are supported by the European Commission, we saw very few examples of development NGOs from new member states implementing them. So this first chapter on development education and awareness raising calls is already published. You can find it on our website, and the other two chapters on development cooperation projects and European humanitarian aid projects are coming out soon in July. So I stop here, and I look forward to the questions.
All right, thank you, Miriam. Very interesting presentation. So I would like to invite all of you to take the opportunity and raise questions to our speakers. Yes, and first of all, if you want to ask a question, please hit the button that we could hear you.
Thank you. My name is Ines Vaivere. I'm from Latvian Platform for Development Cooperation. And at first I would like to express my gratitude for Baltic cooperation because we are really having good relations with Lithuanian colleagues, and I think it's not only at organizational level but also having real impact on advocacy level sometimes. And also as co-chair of Concord Task Force for European Year for Development, I really see that we can cooperate more closely also within this year and achieve more than we can do separately. And as our new president of Concord said, this year can be big opportunity or very big headache. So I hope that we will see it as an opportunity, not a headache. But I would like to ask a question to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You were speaking about sincere interests in developing countries, but very huge issue now is involvement of private sector in development. And I wonder about your Lithuanian perspective on involvement of private sector, any plans, any challenges you see at national level?
Well, yeah, tough question.
Privatusis sektorius.
Now we understanding and actually looking for the innovative ways to finance the development. It's not only Lithuania, it's EU policy to find new ways, and the private sector is one of the possibilities. And if we will be able to involve the private sector in the development, of course it will give huge impact. We're trying to do it. It's not always easy. I'm just speaking now about Lithuanian case, just because more globally in European context, it's another story, and we have good examples. But for us, it's not easy because it's not easy to explain to them, but it's also useful for them, because we don't need to think that and don't have perception that development cooperation should be only the contributing to the partner country. We need to accept that it's also good for us. It's not in the sense of good for us what we are trying to explore the partner countries to grab minerals or something like that. But it's just good for in the same way, establishing the business contact as well. When we are going with development cooperation and we involving business, afterwards we are starting to work together. But for them still it's not very promising idea to well, so how to well, we have courage, but we don't see what they should do it in development cooperation way. We said, okay, if we want to cooperate, we can go and do our business ourselves. What do you need from us? What we help with countries? What we sell for less price or something like that. So it's to find this connection between the development and private sector. It's in Lithuanian case it's still not very easy, although it's it's going, and now we have some companies that they are even to proclaim themselves as user-friendly, development-friendly companies, and we are trying to do responsible business, not harm the partner countries by exploiting the labor force or something like that. So there are some good examples, but still it's not a case in Lithuania. So I don't know.
I would like to ask several questions, just addressing the public and the speakers. I see the young faces in the audience. I am very happy. So do in NGOs activities only young people participate? It's one pleasant question. And the other, you work with societies. Societies are contradictory. Let's say I fight with the Catholic organizations. I fight with traditional parents' organizations. So how do you work with these societies? Because society is not a unity. It's just very different, yes? So will you please explain to me? Thank you. Who can explain to me?
Sorry. Good morning. My name is Malcolm Quigley. I'm here representing DOCUS, the Irish NGDO development platform, and very proud to be here. And thank you very much for the invite. I suppose to follow on from your question, Deputy, and as well as the question on engaging society and engaging the private sector. One of the things that, like, I'm participating in the global citizenship education part later on, and one of the things that I'm going to be talking about is the fact that in order for us to be able to look out, we need to be able to look in, and we need to have certain foundations within our society to be able to start to look outwards. So, for example, understanding democracy, understanding how political systems work, understanding the rights and responsibilities as a citizen towards people within your society who are, in inverted commas, different, and not being threatened by that, and understanding that together, by understanding each other, we can actually move forward and be more productive. We too in Ireland face all those problems. We have whitewashed our history in many ways. The people who have brought about our independence were God-fearing Catholic white men. It's now beginning to transpire that actually, and we've always known this, behind every good man is a great woman. So we're beginning to understand the role of women in our independence. We're also beginning to understand that not all of those men were straight. They were also homosexual, and some of them were. So we're also beginning to understand that there are multiple differences in our society, and being able to understand those helps us to understand further afield. So, in terms of on that part, that actually starts in our education system, bringing in the fact that we are made up of many different peoples, that we have many subcultures within our society, one national identity, but multiple subcultures, and that then starts helping us to be able to understand what is outside of our borders. With regard to companies and the involvement of private sector, the enlightened companies are beginning to realize that actually what happens inside their four walls is not entirely just what matters. What matters is actually, well, where does the cocoa bean come from that ends up in the chocolate bar? And what has happened in that process? Or this mobile phone, what's in this mobile phone? And how many people have suffered because of some of the minerals and materials that have gone in there? So people are companies, enlightened companies, are beginning to realize that it's actually a much bigger view of the world towards their own sustainability that then impacts on their bottom line, on the profit that they can make. And so I think the approach that we need to make towards the private sector is to help them understand that actually there's a bigger world there, and that, you know, there are vulnerabilities in your supply chain, in the way you produce things, in the way you do business, that will directly impact on your profit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aš gal dar norėčiau tik tai labai tokį trumpą.
Also like to provide a short comment on the same topic. Lydia is for over 5 years working with different societal groups, municipalities, neighborhoods. We inform, we educate, we talk, we learn from them, we teach them. And what could we tell now, based on our experience? That people are understandable, they are able to understand, they're sensitive, and it is possible to explain things. You just need to talk to them, and this is what we do. But we alone cannot do everything. We cannot alone to explain some professional things like economical, financial things. We are not able to explain them to our business representatives. Our survey, our investigation, and formal discussions and trainings with different representatives from the municipalities tell us that people support the idea, and business does that too. There are much more supporters than non-supporters, much more interested than not interested parties, much more understanding than not understanding. But they all say that they lack information, they lack knowledge, and we cannot do everything on our own. NGOs, we can introduce general principles, of course, ideas, we understand processes, we have certain experiences, but not everything. So I emphasize once again that there are things to be happy, but also there are things that make us move ahead, and we need interagency cooperation and talking. And we talked to the representatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that at the training in Birštonas there were quite many business representatives from different municipalities. And there was also a representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who stayed all over the training, and she helped a lot. And consultations, advice is so needed. And let's not think that if some business does something, they have to do things on their own, and this is their own business. No, this is the business of all our people, and if we want them to be involved in the support activity, we also need to communicate, and we understand that there's sensitivity and understanding, and we have to make use of that. We have to work with businesses. They also need assistances, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Finance. We need collective efforts because otherwise things will not go ahead. Thank you.
Some commentaries. So, as the representative from Foreign Ministry said, that in every ministry should be somebody or a team responsible for development cooperation. So the same is said that in every ministry should be somebody responsible for equal opportunities. But we hear about it already, I don't know for how long. So one is theory, the other is practice. So who would just be responsible for the implementation of these ideas? Prime Minister? Or, I don't know, who? Maybe you will explain to us. Thank you.
Yes, it's the bureaucratic machine. Yes, a difficult thing, a hard nut to crack. Understand? And why one of our goals of the National Commission, for example, was to involve all institutions, agencies, NGOs, and governmental, municipal organizations. At least for the beginning, in order they hear, they listen, they know what takes place, and we ask each institution to appoint a person responsible for development cooperation so that there's a person or person to talk to. So now people understand that this activity doesn't mean only money. We hear talk of different social factors, environment, etc. So the things overlap. And we had the first meeting 2 weeks ago of our new commission. And what could I tell? I'm not very happy to tell that we had no quorum of those who were invited from those institutions. So that again testifies to the fact that the interest is lacking. Interest and understanding of development cooperation is still far from being understood by many institutions. And that meeting was a clear proof of the difficulties. And I understand that things cannot be miraculous. We go slowly, step by step, towards that. And as the representative of the trialogue said, and our diver said, the process is in place, and education is very important. Developmental education, we use also the concept of the global education, which involves also the development education. So that is very important, and we try to go this road and to support projects which do that. And again, we also expect for your assistance to merge formal and informal or non-formal education so that maybe a new discipline appears and we could involve certain lessons in the plans, and we will need your assistance in negotiations because as strange as it may be, but the data of Eurostat says, and they have in mind 2012, that year, the Eurostat carried out a survey in order to clarify how many citizens support developmental cooperation. Like the question, do you agree that your country contributes to that support, etc.? So nearly 85% of Lithuanians say yes, they agree that this is useful and this should be done. 85% people vote for those positive trends. And now people, they are ready, but they have to be somehow attracted, and the things have to be provided to them, organized better. And education, of course, is key here. And who is responsible, yes, and who are implementers, and who should coordinate the process of implementing? All of us. I'm not sure. I don't know how to answer. But this is your department's responsibility. Yes, we understand we are coordinators, but we cannot tell to the other ministry that you must do this and that. We just coordinate, we provide advice.
But coordination among us that we could address, let's say, me as a member of parliament, I would like to know this institution of coordination. Will you leave to us? Let's say, I hear for the first time that you have established this institution which coordinates in Lithuania the activity. So just spread among the participants. Okay?
Some of them already knows, and some of them even participated at this our commission. I saw somewhere. I think Agni or somebody. So NGOs is our most active players in this field. So sometimes they are kicking us into ass and say you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. Well, yeah. So it's good, of course. Sometimes it's not easy for you. It's easy to say what we need to do this. We need to have this strategy, but well, what to do for us? We can just say, but okay, and we have strategy. It needs financing. It needs something. It needs our institutions to be involved. But step by step we are trying to somehow to improve our situation.
All right. Well, it's a very interesting discussion, and I'm sure that there are more questions you would like to raise. However, according to our agenda, it's time for a break. So let's have a coffee break and come back here at 11 o'clock. And the coffee break is, Arune?
Those two young lads will lead you.
Oh, okay. So let's walk out through this door and then we'll see the signs where we can find the coffee. Thank you.